The pavement burned under the midday Athens sun, cracked, uneven, stained by time and stories that would never be told. It wasn't much of a court, just a backboard barely hanging on rusted metal, some chalk lines scribbled by hopeful kids, but to Thanasis and Giannis Antetokounmpo it was everything. It was church, it was school, it was home. The place where dreams were not just dreamt, they were protected, tested, fought for. Thanasis was the elder by 2 years. He was the first to carry the weight, the first to understand that in Sepolia you had to run faster than hunger, jump higher than despair, and believe harder than the world told you to. Their father Charles was a former soccer player, their mother Veronica a high jump champion back in Nigeria. But in Greece they were undocumented immigrants, selling sunglasses on the street corners to make rent. Every euro was earned the hard way. Every meal felt like a miracle. The two brothers ran side by side through those cracked alleyways. Giannis was wiry, quiet, always trailing a step behind. Thanasis, on the other hand, had that lightning-in-a-bottle energy, talking, laughing, flipping basketballs like they were made of air. People noticed him first. Coaches, neighbors, random passers-by. "That one's got something," they'd say. "The older one. He plays like he's already in America." But Thanasis had already made a choice. Quiet, personal, invisible to anyone else but himself. A secret, born in the rhythm of those endless days on the asphalt. He could see it even then, the rawness in Giannis, the potential buried under shyness and uncertainty. Thanasis began to shape his own game around Giannis's weaknesses. He became louder so Giannis wouldn't have to speak, became the showman so his brother could be the student. He blocked shots so Giannis could learn positioning. He passed more than he scored. He led but not too far ahead. It wasn't a plan, not exactly, it was instinct. Love, perhaps, responsibility. He was the older brother, and in their family that meant sacrifice. They shared everything, clothes, food, hope. On some nights, they even shared the same pair of basketball shoes, swapping them mid-game because neither of them had their own pair. And through it all, Thanasis kept smiling, kept shining. "Do you think I'll ever be as good as you?" Giannis asked one night, barely 10 years old, legs dangling off a concrete stoop, licking a melting popsicle bought with their last coin. Thanasis didn't blink. "You're gonna be better," he said. But deep down, there was more to that answer. It wasn't just belief, it was intention. He had already decided that if only one of them could make it, it had to be Giannis. That was the beginning of the secret. He played every youth tournament like he was auditioning not for himself but for his brother. When scouts came, Thanasis talked more about Giannis than himself. "My little brother," he'd say with a grin, "you should see him play." He meant it, but he also knew the cost. Every opportunity he pushed toward Giannis was one he quietly stepped away from. No one noticed, not their parents who were too busy surviving, not the coaches who thought Thanasis was just the louder, flashier one, and definitely not Giannis, whose eyes still sparkled with disbelief every time someone passed him the ball. Basketball became their language, a way to speak without words, a way to bond without having to face the cruel realities of immigration, poverty, or the racism that crept into every street corner in their neighborhood. But for Thanasis, it also became the vessel for something heavier, a decision to shape his life around someone else's rise. He told himself it wasn't giving up, it was giving way. But sometimes late at night, lying on the floor they shared, listening to Giannis breathe, he wondered, what if I went all in too? What if I chased it as hard as I could, instead of making sure he gets there first? The question haunted him. Still, every morning, he woke up and doubled down on the promise he'd made in silence. When Giannis started to outgrow the makeshift rims and the casual defenders of the local courts, Thanasis was proud, genuinely, profoundly proud. But there was a tremor beneath the pride, a small, quiet fracture. He began to wonder if his brother would one day realize what he had done, the pieces of himself he had set aside. And yet, he never spoke a word. Not when Giannis got invited to play for Philathletikos' senior team. Not when the NBA buzz began. Not even when Giannis started getting attention from agents and journalists. Thanasis smiled through it all. At times he even exaggerated his own eccentricity, became almost a caricature of himself, loud, wild, always the comic relief. It kept the spotlight away from any doubts. He kept training, of course, kept working, because you never knew when your moment might come. But somewhere deep inside, he had written his role. He was the foundation, not the tower. And Giannis? He soared. By 2013, NBA scouts were calling. Thanasis sat in the corner of the gym during those meetings, watching his brother answer questions with nervous smiles and broken English. Pride radiated from him like heat, but so did the silence. He never said, "This was my dream first." He never said, "I slowed down so he could catch up." The night Giannis was drafted, Thanasis stood behind him on stage, beaming. Cameras captured the moment, and the world saw a supportive brother, which he was. They just didn't see the layers beneath, the choices, the trade-offs, the invisible blueprint that had brought them there. Because for Thanasis, the secret wasn't about envy or regret. It was about devotion, a private vow made in childhood that his brother would not just survive, he would rise. And if that meant staying behind in the shadows a little longer, then so be it. But shadows don't last forever, and secrets have a way of surfacing. By the time Giannis touched down in Milwaukee in 2013, everything had changed, but not really. The plane was different, the language was new, the court was polished, lit with spotlights, and surrounded by 20,000 seats. But inside Giannis, the kid from Sepolia was still there, dribbling with worn-out shoes, eyes scanning for his older brother. And in many ways, Thanasis was still there too, only now watching from the other side of the screen, clapping in a tiny apartment, the glow of the NBA draft replay flickering across his face. He was proud. Proud like a father. Proud like a brother who had seen all the hunger, all the sacrifice, all the empty refrigerators and shared sneakers. But the pride didn't erase the feeling growing quietly inside him, a strange mix of purpose and distance, love and longing, triumph and pause. Thanasis hadn't stopped chasing basketball, far from it. He played in the Greek leagues with the same energy that made him famous in the neighborhood, fast, explosive, unpredictable. He was electric, but he wasn't drafted. No big league contract, no overnight success story, just a grind. A lonely, endless grind. And he never told Giannis how much that hurt. He couldn't, not when his brother was carrying so much, learning English, adjusting to American culture, growing into a 6'11" marvel overnight. Giannis was everywhere now. Headlines, magazine covers, ESPN highlights. The Greek freak. Thanasis watched it all like a proud guardian, even as the world forgot he existed. He made his way to the NBA's D-League, now called the G-League, signing with the Westchester Knicks. It was a long road trip from where he'd imagined he'd be. The buses, the motel rooms, the $2 per diems. It wasn't glamorous, but it was a shot, and every shot mattered. But with every dunk, every defensive stop, every locker room moment, the same thought echoed. Am I doing this for me, or am I just staying close to him? Because the truth was, he had never fully chased it for himself. Not entirely. From the start, his energy had gone into building Giannis, into ensuring that he would make it, he would shine, he would escape. And now that he had, Thanasis was left holding the blueprint, wondering if he had built a road he was never meant to walk. Still, he didn't stop. He kept pushing, not out of jealousy, never jealousy, but out of something deeper, a hunger to find his place not just in Giannis's story, but in his own. He'd call Giannis often during those early years, before and after games, during rehab, in between flights. Sometimes they'd talk about plays, sometimes about their mom. But always, Giannis would ask, "Are you okay, Thano?" And Thanasis would answer the same way, with the same smile he wore back in Sepolia. "Of course, I'm good. You keep going. Don't look back." But the truth was more complicated. Thanasis had learned to live in the margins. He wasn't bitter, but he was bruised. Not by what Giannis had accomplished, never that, but by the gap that had grown between their paths. He was still the shield, still the protector, but there were moments, quiet, late, personal, when he wished someone had shielded him too. When Giannis won Most Improved Player in 2017, Thanasis clapped from afar. When Giannis became an all-star, he cheered with the same energy as he had when they were kids. But each time the spotlight swung to his little brother, Thanasis felt both joy and silence. Because no one ever asked what he had given up. No one ever asked what it had cost him. Then came 2019, a call from the Milwaukee Bucks. They wanted Thanasis. Some saw it as a favor, a feel-good story. Bring the brother, the headlines implied. Keep Giannis happy. But Thanasis didn't care. A door had opened, and he wasn't going to ask why. It didn't matter. What mattered was that he would be on the same team, wearing the same jersey, chasing the same dream. Finally. It felt like a reunion. Not just with Giannis, but with himself. He was back in the NBA, in the league. He had arrived not as a footnote, but as a presence. The energy guy off the bench. The heartbeat of the locker room. He screamed on the sidelines. He sprinted harder than anyone in garbage time. He celebrated his teammates like every bucket was a championship. Still, the whisper inside remained. They think I'm just here because of him. They don't know how much I gave. Giannis, for his part, never treated him as less. He looked up to Thanasis the same way he had as a boy, wide-eyed, grateful, inspired. He didn't care about stats. He cared about the bond, the mission, the history. He knew Thanasis had helped build him. What he didn't know, what no one knew, was the full extent of the sacrifice. Thanasis never told him about the tryouts he turned down to stay close, the endorsements he passed up because they might have clashed with Giannis's deals, the agents who said, "You've got potential," only for Thanasis to reply, "Tell me what you can do for my brother." He had lived in orbit so long, he'd forgotten what it felt like to stand still. Then came the 2021 NBA Finals. The Bucks made their run. Giannis was transcendent, historic, and as confetti rained down after Game 6 with tears in their eyes and arms around each other, the brothers stood center court, champions, together. It was the culmination of everything they had dreamed of in Sepolia. The American dream, the immigrant dream, their dream. And yet, Thanasis couldn't play in the final games. He'd been placed in COVID protocols. He watched from isolation. He screamed at the screen. He pounded his chest alone in a hotel room as Giannis dropped 50 points. And when the final buzzer sounded, he cried. Not because he wasn't on the court, but because Giannis had made it all the way. Just like he always believed he would. Later that night, during the celebration, Giannis called him over for an interview. "He's the reason I'm here," Giannis said, pulling Thanasis into frame. "People talk about me, but they don't know. He believed in me before I believed in myself. He's more than a brother, he's the foundation." Thanasis smiled, hugged him, joked for the cameras. But inside, something shifted. The recognition felt different this time. Not just ceremonial, real, deep, heavy. And that's when the old thoughts returned. The question that had never quite left, should I have told him sooner? Should he know the truth? Not just the parts Giannis already suspected, but the full truth. The years he spent playing support, not because he wasn't good enough, but because he believed Giannis was born to lead. That he had chosen to stay in the shadow. The burden of that silence was growing. It was almost time to speak. It happened on a quiet night in Milwaukee. No cameras, no games, no pre-game rituals or post-game interviews. Just two brothers in sweatpants, slouched on a worn sectional couch in Giannis's living room, scrolling through old phone videos. Thanasis had just made some popcorn, and the air smelled like butter and nostalgia. They had been laughing at a clip, one where teenage Giannis tried to dunk on a crooked rim in Sepolia and landed flat on his back, all knees and elbows and skinny ambition. Giannis laughed harder than he had in days. "Man, look at me. I was so uncoordinated back then." Thanasis chuckled, but something was different in his smile. It didn't reach as far tonight. He stared at the screen as the video replayed on loop. Young Giannis getting up, brushing off the dust, and Thanasis right there beside him, extending a hand. "Remember how serious we were about those games?" Giannis said. "Yeah," Thanasis replied. Then, after a pause, "Too serious, maybe." Giannis noticed the shift in tone. "What do you mean?" Thanasis set the phone down. He didn't look at his brother immediately. He just exhaled, slow and steady, like someone who'd been holding their breath for over a decade. "I need to tell you something." Giannis sat up, the room suddenly quiet except for the distant hum of the fridge. Thanasis's eyes didn't flinch. "You ever wonder why I didn't push harder? Why I didn't fight for the NBA the way you did?" Giannis shrugged. "You did. You worked just as hard. You took your own path." Thanasis shook his head. "No, not really. I didn't go all in. Not because I couldn't, because I chose not to." Giannis blinked, confused. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I made a decision a long time ago, back when we were still sharing shoes. I saw who you could become before anyone else did, before even you did. And I decided someone had to help you get there. Someone had to focus on you, clear the way, protect the dream." Giannis leaned back, processing. "Wait, are you saying you gave up your own dream for mine?" Thanasis paused. "I'm saying I rewrote mine." The words hung in the air like fog. "I talked to scouts and steered them to you. I skipped tryouts so I could go with you to meetings. I told agents to watch you. I hyped you up to coaches even when I had the better stats that week. I let them forget about me so they'd focus on you. I did it because I believed in you more than I believed in anything else in my life." Giannis looked down. His hands were clenched without him realizing. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because it wasn't about guilt. I never wanted you to feel like you owed me anything. You didn't. You still don't." "But," Giannis started, then stopped. He was shaking his head now, not in disbelief, but in something closer to grief. "I thought we were both chasing it," he said softly. "I thought we were in this together." "We were," Thanasis said. "We always were, just not on the same terms." The silence stretched again, deep and heavy. Giannis stood, pacing now. His heart was racing. So many moments from the past were reshuffling in his mind, moments that suddenly made more sense. The way Thanasis would deflect praise, the way he never complained, the way he seemed to step back whenever the spotlight approached. "I didn't know," Giannis whispered. "I didn't see it." "You weren't supposed to," Thanasis replied. "That was the point." Giannis sat again, this time right next to his brother, elbows on knees, head hanging low. "You always said I'd be better than you," he said, voice cracking, "because I believed it. But what about you? You could have... God, you should have had your own shot." Thanasis smiled, this time a little sadder. "Maybe. But if I had pushed for me, maybe you wouldn't have made it. Maybe you'd still be in Greece. Maybe neither of us would have made it. I couldn't take that risk. I had to make sure one of us broke through. And you chose me." "I did." They sat in the hush of that confession, the air filled now with something sacred, truth, long delayed. Giannis leaned back, eyes wet. "You should have told me. I wasn't ready. Until now." There was a long pause before Giannis spoke again. "You know, people always say I'm the hero in this story," he said. "The miracle. The symbol." "You are," Thanasis nodded. "But they're wrong," Giannis said. "You are." Thanasis looked over, eyes meeting his brother's. "Nah, I just cleared the path." "No," Giannis insisted. "You built the path." For the first time in years, Thanasis allowed himself to feel it fully, not the pride of watching someone else win, but the quiet dignity of knowing he had sacrificed without needing a spotlight. And now the person he did it for finally saw it. A few days later, Giannis would mention the conversation in an interview, vaguely, cryptically. "There are people behind the scenes of your greatness," he said. "My brother Thanasis, he's not just part of the journey, he is the journey." But the full truth remained theirs, a story between brothers, a bond deeper than trophies or headlines, because Thanasis had made a choice most people wouldn't understand. He traded the dream of being the star for the power of creating one. And now, with the truth finally spoken, the silence he had carried for so long was no longer a weight. It was a legacy, not one written in stats or banners, but in love and in choice.